What's up, guys? This is Stephen Melin, music composer for video games, and today I want to show you behind the scenes my process for writing music quickly. Now, for those of you who have followed me on YouTube for a while, you know that I have the weekly live composing show where every single week for the last, my goodness, 5 years, I have been writing music live with you guys on the stream. And in most cases, I end with a complete finished piece of music from start to finish, usually within between 2 and 3 hours. Now you might be wondering, how the heck do I do that? Well, number one, I've been doing this a little while, so obviously you do something a bunch of times, you get a lot of repetition in, you're gonna get better and faster at it and a little bit more economical. But second, well, I have a process that I follow every single time, and that is really the number one reason why I'm able to start, write, and finish a piece of music all within a 1 day time frame, usually within a few hours. Now, of course, a quick caveat would be that you don't always want to just finish your music in one sitting, because typically your ears on day 2 or day 3 are a little bit fresher and a little bit not as biased towards the composition, but can listen out for things like production and the quality. So I think in most cases, I like to revisit my music and then polish it up from there. But let's chat through today what that actually looks like. What is my process for quickly starting and finishing a piece of music in one sitting? And hopefully by the end of this, this process might be able to help you do the same. So let's jump in. So the first and most important thing is to have an empty session template. Now, of course, some people like to already have a fully decked out template with all of their strings and their brass and their woodwinds and choirs and all that kind of stuff. But to me, that is actually very cumbersome and ultimately is not the way that I want to go. I like to start every single project fresh because every project's different. I write in so many different genres of music and different styles of video games that I just can't really have a one-size-fits-all template. So instead, what I've created is an empty session template. Now, right off the bat, you'll notice that I already have all of my marker tracks in place. I have tracks, sections, chords, time signature, and tempo right off the bat. And then if I'm going to be scoring a video, I can then go to File, Import, Video File, and that will import the video and the audio from the video as well for the cases of film scoring or rescoring a video game clip, which I do a lot on the show. I like to always have a piano already ready to go so that when I start playing, music comes out. And it is intentionally a very dry, bland piano. You can use whatever you want, but this is simply for the purposes of sketching, of quickly writing my music so that as soon as I have an idea, I can capture it with no friction between. And then over here in my mixer, you'll see that I have all of my favorite reverbs already set up. So right here, I have TomTom Studio D, which is my own recording of the TomTom Studio over in Budapest, which is the actual place that I typically record orchestra and choir. So it's a nice ad. Aether, which is an orchestral reverb, B2, which is like a super chorused, effecty, like spaceship kind of sounding reverb, ROM, which is like a really, really moody reverb, perfect for pianos and like solo instruments, Valhalla Shimmer, which actually adds another octave on top of the reverb, the Lexicon Medium Hall, which is one of the classic Lexicon reverbs, and then the Eventide Black Hole. And this way, at any point while writing, if I need to add reverb, I just go to the sends and then choose the reverb I want and then choose the amount, and it's already there. I don't even have to think about loading it all together. And then, for example, like my sketch piano here, if I want, I already have my reverbs set. When I start playing, boom, baby, ready to go. You'll also notice on my stereo out channel strip here, I have this EQ if I want to use it. It's currently turned off, but I use this as a way of monitoring what my EQ looks like and ultimately my volume levels. I have a console. This is an actual channel strip here. The console in, which volume-wise it is +8, but it is also -8. What this is technically doing is actually creating a little bit of an analog console-like EQ. Just kind of makes the sound better. And then I have a limiter on here, and this is set to gain of 0, ceiling of -0.3. That way nothing ever peaks. This last plugin here, Voxingo Recorder, this is simply how you can hear my voice right now alongside any of the DAW audio. So that's not typically there on a blank session. Okay, so there you go. That's my blank session. The second piece of info that I need to start working is some sort of brief from the team. This can be a game design document. This can be an actual music brief from the game developer, or in my case, for the live composing show, a lot of times I'm just rescoring old video games or new video games, clips from the games. In that case, I'm obviously just using the footage to help inform me. But the reason this is important is because it tells me right off the bat what instruments I'm probably going to be leaning into. And so what I would do right before the live show is I would just go ahead and start pulling out some instruments that I think are going to be helpful. So like in the case of a medieval fantasy type scene, I might grab a dulcimer, or I might grab some strings or some brass, whatever I feel like is going to just inspire me when I start to write. I like to get all those things taken care of right from the beginning. It's also important to consider, am I going to be recording any live instruments as part of this process? And in that case, just like yesterday, when I was getting ready for the live composing show, I knew that I was going to record viola and cello, and also my analog synth over here in the studio. So what I did is right before the stream started, I went over here to my audio, and I went ahead and added the channels that I needed. So for example, I needed for my viola, I know that in my audio interface, that is input number 11. It's a mono channel. And so I went over here and I put viola, boom, just like that. And I did the same thing for cello, chose that microphone, and then same thing for the synth. That way, everything is already there. And personally, I like to always color code my audio channels to be blue. That way I visually know that it's an audio channel. And then when it's time to record, I just hit that record button and we're good to go, ready to start. Now that it's time to actually start writing music, number 3, we want to set our tempo and our markers. So this is critical, especially in the world of video game music, because tempo is everything. So right off the bat, if I know that it's going to be a boss battle theme, then it's probably going to be in the range of 120 to 180 BPM. So what I can do is in my session, go over here and just type in whatever I think it's going to be. So if it's a boss battle, probably going to be about 160. Turn it on, I can hear the click in my ears, and now I'm ready to go. Conversely, if it's a slow town theme or like a main title screen or something like that, then I'm gonna hover more towards like 80 or 70. So that's probably what I'm gonna do right now, is just go to 80, and now I know I'm roughly in the right territory. And then the second part of that is creating markers that help to define the space. So typically in video game music, we want to write 1-minute loops or 2-minute loops. Now, of course, there are times where we want to go longer to like 3, 4, 5 minutes, but that is definitely not the norm. That's like maybe 5% of the time that we go into that territory. So 1 to 2 minutes is typically where you want to stay. And a great way to kind of mathematically plan ahead is to look at your tempo. So already we've chosen 80 BPM as the tempo, and we know that we're going to start on bar 1. That's why I already have a section marker right there. So I'm going to skip ahead, and I'm going to be looking down here at the bottom of my screen, and I'm going to be looking at the actual time code right there. And notice in new window, which is the DAW I'm using, I already have a secondary time display set to the time so that I can always see the time, and for my primary time display I have the bar number. That just helps me see both. You can do whatever you want, but that's helpful for me. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scrub ahead until we get to exactly the 1 minute mark. Now, careful, you gotta be watching out that in my case, notice I have a 0 bar that I set up in my project settings, because I like to have 4 bars click and then boom, start recording. So you got to look down here at your time code. Notice that I already lost 3 seconds of time. So in reality, I'm going to have to create a 1 minute and 3 second session if I really want to get this dead on. So there's 1, 3. And then what I do is I'm going to set this to bar 21 as the end point. Go to my sections, and I'm just going to type in loop right there. And technically, this is exactly a 1 minute loop. And then because I'm using new window, Same goes for Logic and a bunch of other DAWs. You can click on this right here, and that is what actually turns on the loop, so that when it gets to the end of this bar, it's going to go perfectly, boom, back to bar 1. Before we start writing, it's also important to try our best and go ahead and section out what we're going to be doing with the form. So in most video game music, we have binary form, which is a B form. So what that means is right here at the beginning, this is going to be my A section, and then we go to the halfway point, and it looks like we have 20 measures of music. So we're going to go somewhere around here is going to be the B section, and then we're going to have a loop. But here already we can see how it's not even, right? Because we have 20 bars of music. We've already set our tempo to be 80, and we already know that's the exact length of time we want to capture is a 1 minute loop. The game developer's paying us for 1 minute of music, right? So in this case, what I probably am going to do is create an intro. So I'm going to do a 2-bar intro that kind of sets up some kind of background motion, and then boom, bar 3, we're going to have an 8 bars. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we're going to do a B section. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we could even do an outro. And then technically the outro and the intro could be very similar in material. Now this is not the end all be all way of dividing up your music, but the main point I'm trying to get across here is I haven't written a single note of music, and in just a few minutes time, I've already established what the order is going to be. Just like if you were writing a pop song, you know that you're already gonna have an intro, you're gonna have a verse, a chorus, a second verse, a chorus, a bridge, a final chorus. Like, you already know the structure because you know how long your song is gonna be, around 3 minutes, and you already know generally the flow of the song. So similarly, that's what we're trying to do here with our instrumental music for video games. And of course, if this was going to be a 2-minute track, I might make the A section twice as long, the B section twice as long. If it's a 5-minute track, I've done a lot of 5-minute tracks actually. You typically have to get into like 3 or 4 complete sections because of how long that is. Or in the case of a really fast piece of music, you can squeeze more material into there because it's just faster. So you might need 3 sections or 4 sections. But in any case, do your best to go ahead and go out of your way here at the beginning and set up the form so that you are ready when it's time to write. You're golden. Now that it's actually time to start writing, I'm gonna go to my piano. Or I could go ahead and just grab some instruments that I wanted to write with. But the main thing for number 4 is you want to start with either the melody or the rhythm. Now, technically, you could also start with harmony as another option, but that's going to be a little bit harder and not as typical. I'm going to suggest, if you're new to this whole speed composing thing, to probably try focusing on either the melody or the rhythm. So let's actually write a little melody. I'm going to start at the A section. And right now I have the click in my ears for 80. Okay, so there we have an A section. And now let's make a contrasting B section, where instead of staying on that A minor 1 chord, let's go down to the F major. Here we go. Okay, and now let's say we have that much material and we now need an intro and an outro. So maybe we can just kind of do kind of like a vamping thing. And then we could also end with the outro. just like that. Now, that's a sketch. So from here, I basically have a whole piece of music, but I need to now start orchestrating and arranging and actually turning that into something and obviously producing, which that is where you will be spending the next 2 to 3 hours, is really extrapolating and experimenting and trying production things. Step 5 is doing the exact opposite of step 4. So if in step 4 you chose melody, then in step 5 you're going to choose the rhythm. You're going to do the opposite. So that way we have a fully fledged piece of music, because there's really 3 elements to music. We have the melody, the harmony, and the rhythm. Now, of course, the rhythm itself is kind of baked in to the melody and harmony, but when I say rhythm, I'm talking about like the background pulse. It could be percussion, it could be a bass line, it could also just be like strings chugging in the background. So the main thing is we need to have a melody that is the main event, and then the supporting structure on the back end. So for the sake of speed in this video and not taking 2 to 3 hours for you, I'm just going to choose an ensemble patch for our supporting material here. So I'm going to use the Berlin Free Orchestra. This is completely free through Orchestral Tools if you want to go check it out. And I'm going to grab something a little bit different here today. Let's do a woodwind ensemble. It's just 2 sustains. And while we're here, let's just go ahead and get string ensemble, sustains, and that should be plenty. Make sure that they're all set to the same patch here. And let's jump in. Next up, we have the filling out of the arrangement. Now, this is really where the bulk of your time is going to be spent. It's taking little sketch ideas like this and then actually throwing them into the appropriate solo instruments, into the appropriate ensemble instruments, and then from there actually producing it and mixing it and actually making it sound great and exactly the way that you want it as it sounds in your head. So for the sake of time on this video, let me just show a couple examples of how I would extract this and actually make it sound nicer. So the first thing I would do is I would take this main melody, and I'm thinking that it needs to be like a solo oboe. That's what it sounds like to my ears. That way we don't have to deal with that, sketch piano, because that's not really intended for the arrangement. So for this one, I'm going to be using the Claire woodwinds, the Claire oboe, which is really pretty. All right, so here we go. I'm going to leave the piano on while I record. There's an idea, and then maybe for this second section, it's obviously a lot more subdued. This is probably like a castle theme. It's kind of where it's leading. Let's do a solo horn. That'd be nice. So this is the solo horn from Cinebrass Pro. Alrighty. And then from here, obviously I want to start producing it, making it sound nicer. So a few things I would do is I would go in here, quantize everything, make sure that all of the beats are accurate. Same goes for all these solo instruments. I don't want to overly quantize it though. I think I want to leave the solo instruments alone. But then over here, let's see, this was winds plus strings ensemble. And then over here, I'm going to set each of those ensembles to some reverb. And we do that quickly in Cubase or New Window by hitting the Q-Link button. It's a grouping function. And then going over here, I'm going to do Aether and then turn them all on. And then let's put them all down to negative 20 dB, which is the send amount. And that should help dramatically. And then do a little bit of volume mixing. Obviously, fix your mistakes. Then from there, fill out the rest of the arrangement. So for me, what I would probably do from here is I'd probably get some low woodwinds and strings to help create that boom, bum, boom, boom, bum, boom, bum, boom, bum, that nice intro, maybe some pluck strings. And then from there, I'd probably double the melody with some violin ones and violin twos, like the ensembles, to get that a nice lush melody. And then probably in the harmony, I might even take the horns and do some chords in the background, maybe take some piano, some harp. And that's really where the bulk of the next 2 to 3 hours is going to be. It's taking the core idea and then extrapolating it out, which is essentially arranging or orchestration. But notice how this entire time I started off with a very clear idea of where I wanted to go, and then I gave myself the liberty to experiment and to play around with different sounds, play around with different instruments, and from there, that's really where the bulk of the work is. But that first few steps is really where all the magic happens. It's where the core idea gets out there, it gets solidified. And then from here, the final step is to export. Now the good news is I already have my looper bar set, but that's not good enough because we want to deliver a reverb tail to the game developers, or maybe you yourself will be doing some coding in Wise or Fmod in middleware for the game itself. And so you're gonna want to have a reverb tail. So I like to always give myself at least 1 bar of space at the end past the edge of the track. And then from there, I'm going to go to my export and I'm going to create a single stereo out file that combines all of these together. I like to always export as 48 kilohertz sample rate, bit depth of 24-bit, even though my session was at 96K 32-bit float. This is the industry standard for quality. And then I sum it all together and I send that as a WAV file. Now, in the case of demos, doesn't matter as much. I might just send an MP3 set to 320 kilobytes per second. But whenever you're working with MP3s, you got to be careful because part of that compression is there's a little bit of silence added to the beginning of your track, so it will not loop properly as intended. So I typically don't do that. I just send WAV files unless someone just needs to listen to it, right? And there you go. That's how we export. And there you have it. That is my process for writing a full piece of music from start to finish in one sitting. Now, of course, in a live stream setting, You kind of get that fire lit underneath you since you're in front of a live audience, and typically you can work a little bit faster, a little bit with more energy. Is this a sustainable way of writing music if you do this every single day? Probably not so much. But for me, I have found I like to do this at least once per week because it just forces me to get the job done. But despite being able to write really quickly, I want you guys to know that I pretty often will also take the next day or maybe 2 or 3 days later. Sometimes I go back to that music and I like to revisit it. That way when my ears are fresh, I can listen to the details of the production and not be so caught in the composition side of the brain. And often I will mute some tracks, or I might delete a part, or I might change an instrument, or whatever. I might change some things. And I will also put another caveat into the mix here, that if you are preparing to record with live soloists, that's a completely different ballgame, because in that world, you now have to prepare all of the MIDI for sheet music. Once you record the live musicians, you have to import those back into the session, get them all timing correct, and then you also have to mix them. So that is a way more time-consuming process than simply writing a piece of music in one sitting in the box. But for the purposes of getting you to write more music, I hope that this is an inspiring way to have a little bit of a formula, a little step-by-step process that hopefully inspires you to actually write more music, get it done. And in the case of writing for video game music packs, or even just putting demos together, don't be afraid to write quickly. It can really, really help you have a higher output. And by doing it more, you'll actually increase the quality of your work too. Hope this was helpful. Look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. See you then.